Thank you very much for having this meeting tonight. And I think what you're seeing is an example of community pride of San Leandro, which we're very proud of. Some Black people are here tonight too. I have a few questions, and maybe there'll be a comment in there too. But my question is dealing with the flora as well as the fauna. I know that there's probably some concern by people of, nesting species and other animals that live in the creek. So I wonder what part that plays in your analysis of the project. Some of these are animals that we love and are cute, and then there's also those creek rats. And I'm concerned whether there's going to be any impact on those, whether they'll be dislodged, etc. And then with regard to the habitat, I think it's a great thing that you're interested in restoring native habitat. But I just would like to know how that will work with some people have talked about the brush and the ivy, etc. The ivy, which is very toxic to the ability for native species to take hold, and also the continued, with trees that will stay in the creek. If any of you who live along the creek know that the eucalyptus replant themselves very readily. So, if you're removing trees and trying to establish habitat with native species, how do you deal with that ongoing? That probably should be part of the overall plan. But I'd like to hear from the environmental people and how they are going to deal with some of those sensitive issues, because it's you're dealing with trees, but there's a lot of other things that will be impacted. Oh, and I have one last question. State Fish and Game, I think they do have a role in this, and I'd just like to hear what that is.
Yeah, the State Department of Fish and Game does have a role in this. We do apply for a stream bed alteration agreement, and that application is currently pending. And with that, we have conducted biotic studies of all of the potential impacts to birds or other types of wildlife, and these are all addressed in our best management practices, and they will also be addressed in the conditions of the permit that Fish and Game does issue that we expect to get ultimately. And then regarding the species and what was taken into consideration, I'm going to let Dan Stevens talk about that a little bit.
So I'll do my best to respond to your questions. Those are sort of big, broad questions, and obviously we have limited time. But first of all, with respect to displacement of wildlife, obviously if we remove these great, 40 big eucalyptus trees, some wildlife will be affected. So we visited all the sites with our wildlife biologists, our botanists, and our restoration ecologists, and we looked very specifically at that. What type of habitat will be removed, and very specifically what species, from birds, fish, mammals, would be affected by the project. The biggest question for us being, will there be a significant effect either for SEQA or for the Department of Fish and Game? Is there a population, for example, that would be eradicated of species? The answer to that was no. But we did determine that there are certain species or suites of species, particularly birds, that would be affected by the project. And but what you'll see is that even if you look at these aerial photos, is that we're taking out a fairly small amount of the habitat, of the eucalyptus habitat. First of all, it's a compromised habitat. It's of lesser value than native habitat, but we're taking out a very small portion of the overall habitat, which means that the wildlife species that are using those trees that we're going to be removing they will be displaced. They will move. They're mobile creatures, especially birds, of course. They'll move to adjacent habitats, and there's abundant available adjacent habitats that will be left completely undisturbed. So, first of all, we recognize that there will be displacement of wildlife species, but they have a place to go. With respect to the non-native plants in the creek, they are very aggressive. This project is not going to be able to wrangle with that pervasively, which is really how you need to address invasive species on a creek as a whole. But this is a start. This is a way to take small areas and do eradication, and we've set up our restoration projects that will go in, and within the footprint, what we'll already have to be disturbing the area to remove the trees, we said, let's take a really aggressive approach in that small area, really keep all the invasive plants out, put in some native plants, and try to get those native plants to establish so that they can then compete at some reasonable level with the invasive plants. But we all have to be realistic and realize that will be an ongoing battle for some time on a creek like this, because the invasive plant, the ivy and whatnot are everywhere. And the eucalyptus, there will be some resprouting, but there will be very surgical use of herbicides to address the resprouting eucalyptus. There will be a very specific, what's the term for the herbicide application plan, vegetation, certified pesticide applicator will produce as part of the bid from the contractor a plan for the use of herbicide, and those herbicides will have to be approved by Fish and Game and the EPA for use in aquatic settings to keep back, and those will be applied to keep the non-native plants back within the restoration areas only. So it's in a very sort of limited footprint. So we're making a very strong, good faith effort to control the non-natives and to get the native plants to reestablish in the area.
How is that to be applied?
That will be in the management plan that's prepared by the certified pesticide applicator, and it will also be reviewed by Fish and Game.
And will vector control be monitoring as well for the vector issue?
Which vectors in particular?
Tree rats, Norwegian rats.
I don't think so.
Concerned about?
No, I'm just
In terms of
concerned that
drug
I'm just concerned that the project might. There are rats in the creek, a lot.